Hey, you're listening to the Riverdale Podcast. This is episode number 109. My name is Jonathan. Welcome to lovely Riverdale, USA. This is a weekly Archie Comics fan podcast. We update every Saturday morning, and every week we break things down into 4 categories. The first category is the book of the week. That's the comic book I read this week. Sometimes it's a new comic book, sometimes it's an old comic book, but it's always an Archie comic book. We move then to the news of the week. That's what happened in the world of Archie in the week since our last podcast. Then on to new releases. That's what came out this past Wednesday. Will be coming up this coming Wednesday from Archie Comics and your digital releases of the week. And finally this week, we're going to be talking about a giveaway, a cool giveaway we're doing here in the month of April. Awesome. I want to remind everybody that this show is supported by you guys, the listeners. There's a cool, easy way for you guys to support the show financially. If you're into it, if you're excited about it, if you're downloading it every Saturday morning, and you'd like to give a little back, you can head over to RiverdalePodcast.com, and over on the left-hand side, you'll see a big subscribe button, and through that, you can elect to donate $3 a month to the show, $5 a month to the show, or a whopping $10 a month to the show. It's hugely helpful. It's I think it's the best, most direct way to do this sort of relationship. I think I can, try to sell you something on someone else's behalf, and they can then give me some money for the money you spent in support of the show. This seems more reasonable to me. We're going to try it out, see how it works, and as I said, at the end of the show, we're going to be talking about a giveaway that is for the folks who are contributing to being residents of Riverdale, being Riverdale residents. Awesome. With all that out of the way, we're going to get on to the show and get into the book of the week. All right, this week's book of the week is Betty and Veronica, Double Digest, number 222. I'm digging back into the digest, guys. I feel like I took some time off reading digest. I think I got a little overwhelmed by the sheer page count of these. But just a couple weeks back, I talked about the World of Archie Double Digest, and that sort of got me back in the swing of things. In any event, enough about me. Betty and Veronica Double Digest number 222 is a super lot of fun. We're going to go through and hit some of the highlights that I was particularly excited about. The first of which is the very first story. Betty and Veronica in Runaway Ronnie. And I was trying to decide whether this had been previously published or whether this was not necessarily maybe even a new story that was commissioned, but maybe an inventory story that was hanging out in a drawer somewhere that they pulled out. Because this is a full 22-page issue-length story that's got, a couple acts. And it's super, super good, you guys. This was written by Angelo DeCesar. Pencils by Jeff Schultz. Love Jeff Schultz. Especially drawing Betty and Veronica. Inks by Al Milgram. Letters by Jack Morelli. And colors by Barry Grossman. Now, I guess if Barry Grossman is still coloring the book, then this might be older than I think it is. If you remember this story from an issue when it came out, please let me know, because I would love to see the original context of this story. But it's really terrific. This is I dare say, almost a realistic kind of tale of Veronica deciding to get a job and leave her parents' house in not in like an empowered, independent kind of way, in like a angry, I'm getting out of here kind of way. And we see the ramifications of that, and we see Betty's concern for her as a friend. And there are some terrific Jughead jokes in here. I'm pretty sure that this ends with a good Jughead pun, but yes, this ends with a really good Jughead pun. And by good, I mean bad. That's generally how puns work, to my mind. So that story's great. Next up is a whole bunch of great Kathleen Webb stuff. The first of which is Attempting Assault. It's an awkward title. Written by Kathleen Webb, as I said. Pencils by Dan DeCarlo. Inks by Allison Flood. Letters by Bill Yoshida. Colors by Barry Grossman. I'm going to place this around somewhere between like 89 and 91. Probably closer to 91, looking at the fashion of things. And this is a pretty simple story. Archie is all wrapped up in Veronica, and Reggie sets up this bet with Betty that she can't kiss him in front of Veronica. And it's just like a cool Betty and Reggie story. It's their competition as they go through. And, there's a good twist ending at the end. Everything works out. Reggie loses, just like we want him to. Betty wins. Good stuff. There's a certain era in here that I think it's well represented with a lot of Kathleen Webb stories in here. We don't see enough of her work at Archie anymore, that's for sure. There's a few great stories in here written by Kathleen Webb, penciled by Stan Goldberg, and inked by Rudy Lepic. And there's a real energy to these. They're just slightly off model in this way that I really, really like. I assume that that's owing to the inking style of Rudy, but I'm not sure of the era in which these were done. It's definitely not the later Stan style where things got a little loopier and a little looser. It's somewhere in between his old style and his new style. I'm not describing it well, but I love those stories, and there's quite a few of them in here. It's a great story where Veronica gets an assistant. That's a super, super well-paced story. We also got a few Sabrina stories in here. I believe these are of the era of the live-action TV show. I assume that in their original publications, these stories had the photo covers with Melissa Joan Hart. And that doesn't tend to be my favorite era of Sabrina at all. But that stuff was also coming out when I was, 15 or 16 years old and just wasn't in this world anymore. So I just don't have a fondness for that era. But certainly good stories. Classic Dan DeCarlo art for sure. And speaking of Dan DeCarlo, I think the standout story from this issue, worth the price of admission alone, is Betty and Veronica in The Triangle. This is written by George Gladier. Pencils by Dan DeCarlo, inks by Rudy Lepic, letters by Bill Yoshida, colors by Barry Grossman. And this is a tale that is narrated, I guess, by George himself, or maybe from the perspective of Dan DeCarlo, but we get a nice bookend of Dan DeCarlo drawing himself at the artist table, which is awesome. It's an image of him drawing Betty and Veronica at the table that he himself has drawn. So there's something cool and kind of meta-textual about that. And there's an abstract quality to it in that Betty and Veronica literally rip Archie in half, and he has this sort of like paper tear down the center, and Betty and Veronica carry him off. It's super good. It's just like a little sort of rumination on what makes the love triangle the love triangle. And it ends with Dan DeCarlo looking right at you from the drawing board, and he says, so in the final analysis, maybe there really is no solution to the eternal Archie, Betty, Veronica love triangle. And maybe, dear readers, that's exactly the way we want it. And maybe truer words have never been spoken or written in this case. But like I said, standout story there. I've never seen Dan DeCarlo draw Dan DeCarlo. Maybe I have, but it really, really stands out here. It's really nice. We got some old classic Dan DeCarlo art, probably early 60s stuff there. That is really beautiful. And some Frank Doyle written stories. Those are always a pleasure. And as always with Double Digest, I'm skipping over things. I'm kind of ripping through the pages here. There's a cool story called Parting Ways. This is a Frank Doyle scripted story with pencils by Dan DeCarlo, inks by Rudy Lepic, letters by Bill Yoshida, and colors by Barry Grossman, as always. And this I thought was going to be a silent story throughout, but it's just the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the first 5 pages. A 6-page story, the first 5 of which are completely without word balloons, just sound effects and stuff. And it turns out that at the end of the story, there's this nice twist. Betty and Archie are hanging out at this bus station, and they're kind of hanging out and smooching. And the sort of timekeeper, the schedule keeper, keeps waiting for them to get on a bus, and they explain to him at the end that it's one of the few places they can go to publicly where they can just sort of hang out and kiss, because people are kissing each other goodbye, and they don't get hassled. Frank Doyle is always good for a story like that. Just a great talent at those shorthand stories like that. I guess that's gonna wrap it up in general. Later in here, there's another Betty story called Pizza with Extra Heart, and that's another story like I was referring to with the Stan Goldberg art and the Rudy Lepic inks. It's a really nice combination. I can't put my finger on exactly what I like about it, but maybe you'll be able to when you see it. Towards the end of the book, we get a couple great Dexter Taylor, Little Archie stories. I love the way that Dexter Taylor draws the Little Archie characters. As much as everyone loves the Bob Bowling renderings, I think if you were to put Dexter Taylor stuff next to Bob Bowling stuff, there would be no real comparison. They're so radically different from one another, and they're each incredibly effective. And I guess that's going to do it for this issue. As always, I always say this, and it's always true. The Double Digest, the whole digest line is just a lot of fun for your money. I was at a Kmart today. I hadn't been to a Kmart in ages, and there were the Double Digests right there in the grocery aisle where they belong, right there in the register aisle, the checkout lane, as it were. Just classic, a classic part of Americana at this point, and then full of classic great stories. You can't go wrong with this week's Book of the Week, Betty and Veronica, number 222. All right, Archie news this week. In Archie news, a bunch of stuff. Let's dig right in. Over at nextlevelgeek.com, there's an interview with Tanya Del Rio, talking a little bit about her history at Archie and her work on Sabrina, but largely getting press, getting people talking about Diary of a Girl Next Door, the Betty book that Tanya Del Rio wrote, and that it's a sort of a prose novel, a diary-style book. Bill Galvin is supplying the illustrations for that. So good to see them pushing that this early. That's super interesting. We got another few months before that comes out, so that's exciting for sure. Over at Robot 6 on Comic Book Resources, we got an interview with Alex Segura, the director of publicity at Archie Comics, and then also the editor of the Red Circle line, the newly minted editor of the Red Circle line. And we'll talk about that a little bit after we talk about the next two stories. The Washington Post had an interview with John Goldwater, as did Nerdist.com. And these are almost interchangeable in the ground that they covered. But it was interesting to have John Goldwater out there this week talking up stuff. And both of these articles were, I guess it's hard to say. It's easy for me to say that they were rhetorical because I've been following the company all these years, at least these last 5 years that John's been in charge. So it's definitely information that the public needs. Things like, Kevin Keller, things like Afterlife with Archie, things like Life with Archie, these, quote unquote progressive things that Archie is putting out. And to me, that doesn't need to be reiterated. I feel like everybody knows that Archie is doing these great inventive things, but that is not necessarily so. It's probably not mostly so. It's probably not so at all. So it's cool to see John Goldwater out there getting interviewed, especially by the Washington Post. That seems like a really big deal. But the thing I took away from each of those interviews, both of the John Goldwater interviews and then also the Alex Segura interview over on CBR, is that they both talked about the Red Circle line and how they are going for a more adult approach. This is super interesting to me because when you go back to the initial launch of Red Circle with the New Crusaders, it was really aimed at being an all-ages line. They were putting it right in line with the Sonic stuff, with the Mega Man stuff. And I feel like if they are going for an adult-type line, a mature readers kind of line, then they have a lot more competition in that market. Obviously, the big superhero folks, the DC, the Marvel folks are definitely churning out superhero books for adults en masse week after week after week. So it's going to be really interesting to see what they do to differentiate themselves in that market. In any event, all of those interviews are worth reading. Definitely just to get an idea of what's coming and where everybody's head is. Finally, this week in news, Publishers Weekly published a list of or at least some highlights of what we're expecting to come from Archie this fall in terms of their collected editions and trades and all of that. And a few things caught my eye. I guess a couple things caught my eye. One is the Best of Archie. The Best of Archie Comics Volume 4 is coming out this fall. That's rad. We just got this week the Best of Archie Comics Betty and Veronica special. So that's rad. But coming up, they are doing a remastered edition of the first volume of the Best of Archie Comics. This is the 400-page paperback, low price point, I believe, of $9.99 on that initial paperback edition. This is a remastered edition coming out in hardcover for $19.99. At least that's the price that's quoted. I did a little digging online. We'll see what happens when the actual edition comes out. Take all this information with a grain of salt. But I think it's cool. We'd heard through various sources that the initial run of the Best of Archie Comics had sold out and been reprinted a couple of times. So it's cool that they're giving it a nice hardcover treatment. It'd be nice to see what that looks like. Also coming up is a collected edition of the Sonic the Hedgehog Mega Man crossover from last summer, Worlds Collide. That has come out, or is in the process of coming out. I believe we've gotten 2 of the 3 trade paperbacks coming out on that one. And it looks like we're going to get a nice, prestige big edition with all of those coming up. So that's super exciting. And that's going to do it for the news this week. In recap, Tanya Del Rio was interviewed over at Next Level Geek. Alex Segura interviewed over at Robot 6. John Goldwater interviewed by the Washington Post as well as Nerdist.com. And we got the publishing lineup for Archie's collected editions for the fall. Head over to RiverdalePodcast.com. You'll find links to all of those stories. All right, new releases for this past Wednesday, April the 2nd. Of course, this week's book of the week, Betty and Veronica Double Digest number 222 for $3.99. And as I just mentioned, this week we got the Best of Archie Comics, Betty and Veronica, Volume 1 for $9.99. That's 400-plus pages of classic and contemporary Betty and Veronica stuff. That book looks fantastic. It's a must-have, and it definitely, if you enjoyed this week's Betty and Veronica Double Digest, this is like that times 2 or 3. That is fantastic. Coming up next week, this coming Wednesday, April the 9th, we have Afterlife with Archie, number 4. This is a reprint of number 4 that came out a few weeks ago, and this has the beautiful cover of Archie's dog, Vegas. Even if you have this issue, keep an eye out when you head into the shop next week. You're going to want to see that cover. I posted that a few weeks back on the blog. If you want to head back on RiverdalePodcast.com, you can find that cover. It's beautiful. Also next week, Archie Super Special number 5 for $9.99. This we were hoping to get this back in February, I think, or late January. We saw the cover, the mock-up, all of that stuff for this being a special Valentine's Day edition. This is a quarterly publication, and that got pushed off, but it looks like we're getting a really, really pretty springtime theme. The cover looks great. They always have those foil embossed covers. I'm a big, big fan of the Archie Super Special. It's a little oversized magazine edition. It's square bound, so it's nice. It sits on your shelf nicely. It's usually got some kind of editorially kind of writing in the beginning, letting you know what's going on in the world of Archie. Hopefully we're going to get some fan letters and stuff in that like we have in the past. Big fan of Archie Super Special, coming out number 5 next week for $9.99. Also next week, Archie Double Digest, number 250. This is $5.99. This is the Double Digest, 320 pages of great Archie comics, celebrating that 250th issue. I'm psyched about that. That's going to be great. As I said, that's $5.99 next week. And finally, next week, we're getting Sonic Select, volume number 9 for $11.99. This week's digital exclusive over at digital.archiecomics.com, archiedigital.com, Comixology, wherever you get your digital comics. This week's digital exclusive is Archie and Friends, The Golf Club, for $3.99. This is a 100-plus page digital exclusive. This is, I really, really want this to continue. I really like the digital exclusives. I generally don't find the time to read them with just the number of digest and double digest and issues and stuff coming out. But I like the idea that they are getting more and more specific. We had a sports one. I think we had a football one. Now we have a golf one. I love that there are enough Archie stories containing or centered around golf to pull together a 100-page exclusive like this. I hope that they continue to get more and more esoteric. I hope the focus just narrows and narrows and narrows as they get deeper into all of these digital exclusives. But enough about that. Those are your new releases for this past Wednesday, the 2nd, this coming Wednesday, the 9th, and your digital exclusive of the week from Archie Comics. All right, finally today, I talked about at the top of the show, the Riverdale Residence Program. You heard all about that. If you go over to RiverdalePodcast.com, you can sign up to contribute to the show in any denomination you would like to. The cool thing about this is I've decided sort of in response to that, we're going to do probably every other month, probably bi-monthly. We're going to do a cool giveaway. I'm going to gather up some stuff and pull a random name of someone who has become a Riverdale resident, is contributing to the show financially, and kind of give back. We'll have hopefully some fun with this. I think it'll be cool. But I wanted to talk about this month's stuff, this prize pack that I have pulled together. There's a post up over at RiverdalePodcast.com. Should be the one right under this episode's post. It has a picture of everything, so definitely go over and see what everything looks like. But in this prize pack for this month, there is a terrific Team Betty t-shirt. This is a men's large t-shirt, graffiti designs, high quality Hanes t-shirt. Looks rad. Awesome. We've also got 2 of those Archie Comics Hot Wheels cars that we talked about when those came out maybe a month or so ago. Fantastic. Those are high-quality, rad cars with beautiful card art of Archie Comics, and then also great Archie Comics art on the cars themselves. We've got 2 cars in there. Also, we've got some old-school Archie trading cards, some sealed wax packs of the old 1992 trading cards. I love those trading cards. I have a complete set. And also the coolest piece, in my estimation, judge for yourself, we have a great pen and marker sketch by Dan Parent. This is a head sketch of Archie. I picked this up from Dan quite a while ago. It's been in my collection for a little while. I'm going to pass it on to you guys. It's fantastic. So head over to Riverdale Podcast and check those out. They look great. I guess we should get into the rules a little bit. If you are currently a Riverdale resident, if you're contributing to the show, you're already entered. No sweat. You're in the running. And the cutoff date is going to be the 24th of this month. So you've got nearly 3 weeks there to decide whether you want to be a part of all of this or not. And then I'll announce the winner on the final show in April. That'll be the 26th coming up. So that'll be 3 weeks away. We'll announce it. A little less than 3 weeks until you've got to have your name in the running to make it happen. So let me know what you guys think about this. As I said at the beginning of the show, I think this is, for me, the best way to sort of monetize the show is to be direct about it, really upfront. Cut out the middleman, except PayPal, of course, and then try to do something fun and give back to you guys in this way. Let me know what you think. I'm excited about it. Head over to RiverdalePodcast.com and check out the link there. Check out the pictures of the cool prizes, and I hope that you all win. I don't know how that would work, but I'm excited about it. On the way out today, I want to remind everyone to head over to RiverdalePodcast.com. There you're going to see the terrific Jeff Schultz cover for this week's Book of the Week, Betty and Veronica Double Digest number 222. You'll also find links there to like the show on Facebook, follow the show on Twitter. Please send us an email with any of your thoughts, ideas, likes, dislikes, any of that. Any questions to RiverdalePodcast@yahoo.com. You can also call in with a voicemail if you want to hear your voice on the podcast. If you have a question or a comment, you can call in and leave a voicemail at 573-427-2443. That's 5734-ARCHIE. The Riverdale Podcast is part of First Comics News. Head over to firstcomicsnews.com for all of your up-to-date news in the world of comics, podcast, reviews, cool stuff going up all the time at firstcomicsnews.com. I think that's everything, guys. Thanks to everyone who supports the show. Thanks to everyone who's downloading every week. Thanks for folks for writing in. Thanks for folks being active on Facebook and Twitter and reposting, reblogging stuff, responding to stuff. It's always super fun to hear something back once you've put something out into the world like this. So I guess that's going to do it for this week. Like I said, thanks so much for listening week after week. I really, really appreciate it. Again, my name is Jonathan, and I'll see you again next week here in lovely Riverdale, USA.